And tell me about basically what MidPen, what do you do for the peninsula and preserving that space and the hiking trails there?
Sure. Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District is a public agency, commonly known as MidPen. We're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year since voters created this organization. And our mission really has not changed in those 50 years. We preserve public open space land in the greater Santa Cruz Mountains region. We protect and restore the natural environment in those public open space preserves that we manage. And we create opportunities for the public to connect with and enjoy nature. Additionally, on the San Mateo County coast, we support agricultural use of the public open space land.
And why do you think it's important for people to enjoy those open spaces and kind of reconnect with nature?
Well, you protect what you love, right? And connecting with nature has so many benefits for communities in the area, for people, whether or not you actually go out in the preserves or you just enjoy them from afar. The time spent in nature has mental and physical health benefits. Our increased use during the pandemic really showed that. But these lands also create clean air, clean water, carbon sequestration. So there's so many benefits to having these preserved public open space lands in this very populated Bay Area.
And Cody, speaking of preserving what you loved, tell me about what you do there.
So I specialize in vegetation. And so, really my job is to protect and to restore the habitats here for the wildlife, for special status species, and for the wildlife that we have throughout the area. So a lot of my job is, playing in the mud, getting dirty, counting flowers, but really protecting those things for our children's children.
And why do you think it's important to even have people like you who dedicate their time to make sure that this continues to thrive?
California is one of 36 biological hotspots throughout the world. And a biological hotspot, only makes up a very small percentage of the world. And it contains, though, a high percentage of species diversity. So what we have here in the California area is a high amount of species diversity. And so it is really behoved on us to make sure that we protect these species, not only for their own sake, but also just for our own sake. They provide so many different benefits to us, both, clean air, they provide clean water, and these things can really help us really integrate into the natural world and provide a lot of benefits for everybody who's in the surrounding area and worldwide. Like Leanne was talking about with climate change, our lands really sequester a lot of carbon, and it is a way for us to combat climate change.
And Leanne, tell me about the work that you're doing in terms of trying to protect these areas from wildfires.
Yeah, so MidPen's mission has really stayed the same over the last 50 years. When we were created 50 years ago, climate change was not top of mind for a lot of people. Today it is, and our mission is very relevant in terms of what we can do to offset the effects of climate change. So more frequent and intense fire is something that we are seeing as a result of ongoing drought and changing climate conditions. And MidPen has always done annual work around fire prevention, preparation, and response. But we've proactively increased these efforts because of the changing conditions we're experiencing. So we are, through our Wildland Fire Resiliency Program, doing a lot of work in the preserves, doing vegetation management that's really aimed at making the forests healthy and making the landscapes resilient to fire. So the work we're doing will keep any fires that do occur, keep them low intensity, keep them on the ground, and make sure that these landscapes can recover and be resilient.
And Cody, I imagine that you see a lot of the parts of the wild ones in the nature that most people don't get to see. So what are you seeing in terms of how things have changed over time due to climate change?
So so due to climate change, there's multiple species that are benefiting from climate change, and there's multiple species that are not. And so, if you were to look back through history and look at our landscapes, we would have seen a lot more grasslands throughout the Bay Area. And these have slowly been overtaken by brush that are very adapted to climate change and the lack of fire. So we've done a really great job as humans to suppress fire, and this has allowed what we call encroachment into these areas. So not only are grasslands, but also another sensitive habitat, our oak woodlands, are also being overtaken. And these are being overtaken by a lot of different conifers. And so we call it overtopping, where the conifers come in, and where a fire might come through and take out some of those firs and let the oaks survive without the fire, they start to grow above the oak trees, and eventually they shade them out. So it's a thing that we are looking at to make sure that we can maintain the different types of habitats that we have throughout the area. It's sort of hedging our bets in a way to make sure we have all these different types of habitats that can survive, and that adds to the resiliency of our landscape that we have here in the Bay Area.
And Leanne, so I would imagine that, recently, because of the wildfire activity that we've seen there, especially, getting closer down to like the Ben Lomond area and things like that, you have a lot of steep terrain where we've had fire activity recently. What are you doing to help protect those areas and where we have residents too?
Mm-hmm. So through our Wildland Fire Resiliency Program, we work to prevent, prepare for, and be ready to respond to wildland fire in many different ways. We're working year round on this. One critical aspect is our ranger and maintenance staff are annually trained as certified wildland firefighters. They were actually critical in partnering with CAL FIRE during the CZU fire in August 2020. They held the fire line at Old Hull Road, and that prevented the fire from coming into MidPen preserves and the Skyline area. So this year we completed our certification and fire training earlier than we ever have before to make sure that we're ready during this drought should a fire occur. Additionally, we are constantly working on vegetation management projects. We have some criteria that helps us prioritize what projects we need to do first. And those are, as I mentioned, really aimed at creating healthy ecosystems that can be resilient to fire and slow fire and keep the intensity low. So those are some of the things that we are constantly working on year round.
And Cody, what would you like for the average person to do to help preserve the wildlife out there and the nature that we have in MidPen?
So, there's two really important things for everyone. We can't do this alone. The fire agencies can't do this alone. So we are really looking to our neighbors and to all the visitors that are coming here. So for our neighbors, we want to make sure that you are maintaining your defensible space. That is that 100 feet from your house, making sure that it's available for firefighters as a place for them to take a stand. We also ask that people really think about hardening their homes. What this means is, looking at your house and see where there might be some sort of kinks in your chain of safety. So Have you cleaned out your gutters? Have you removed all the dead litter that might be on around your house? Do you have maybe a wooden porch or something that you might want to consider upgrading to something that is not flammable? Hardening your house is one of the most important ways that you can protect your home from flying embers or whatnot coming into it. The second thing for our visitors when they're coming to visit, to make sure that you're coming prepared. You want to make sure that you have all the water and all the food you need while you're out enjoying our preserves. What we don't want to happen is if we do have an incident where there is a fire, and then you're out, hiking around, and then there's some sort of emergency with you that would take away from our emergency response. So be very aware of what the weather is like, making sure you have and prepared for being out on the preserves. In addition, we have a many regulations to help prevent fire. So these include like not allowing smoking on our properties, making sure we don't have any firearms on our property. And this will really help to reduce those chances of a fire even starting.
That was some really great information. Leanne, what would you like to add for information that you'd like for everyone to know about MidPen?
Yeah, as Cody mentioned, people in MidPen preserves are hiking, mountain biking, walking their dogs, doing their daily exercise, and these activities don't tend to be very flammable. So it's pretty unusual that we have fires starting within MidPen preserves, and that's great. But we do a lot of work in our preserves to prevent any fires that do come through from being less intense. And I would say that fire is a fact of life in California, and we all need to do our part to learn how to live safely with it.
Okay, from either of you, is there something else that you'd like to add or anything that we may be leaving out?
From my perspective, the one thing I would like to mention is we went through a very long process to develop our wildland fire resiliency program. It covers the entirety of all of our preserves, and that process was heavily influenced by the public, right, and by fire agencies and by all of our neighbors. We continue to ask for help from the public. If you see something out there and it looks of concern, let us know, and we can take a look at it and see, is it a concern or not. In addition, we're continuing to be adaptive management with our fire program. And so the fire program can change with time. We understand that the world is not static, right? And so the fire program with our monitoring efforts can really help shape the way we do our work. And with that, we do meet with all the fire agencies on a yearly basis to sort of hear from them what they feel is priorities for us to do. And so we really welcome that input from the fire agencies to sort of help us understand where they're seeing concerns. And then, going through us, it really helps by having, we have a team of wildlife biologists and a team of vegetation ecologists here to listen to what those fire agencies say and sort of translate it so that way we have the least amount of impact on the actual environment while still making it safe for everybody that is coming to visit our preserves and for our neighbors surrounding us. We are in the process of developing further our prescribed fire program, and that's taking, we're hope to complete that in the next year or so. And we'll be doing some public open houses coming up here this summer to gather input from the public and from stakeholders to talk about, what are the uses and what's good about prescribed fire. And, one of those big things that we really like about the prescribed fire program so far is, one of the objectives is training, is to allow our staff to work with fire agencies together on a live fire, and where we can sort of work out any kinks about working with other agencies. So, do our radios work together? Do we know how to hold a line? Do we know how to do backfires or whatnot? And so the training aspect is really, really important. And so I just encourage everybody to make sure that they understand, the effects of fire, to understand the benefits of, what we call good fire, prescribed fire in the area. You might see smoke up in the air, and that could be us providing an opportunity of a training opportunity and or to reduce fuels through a prescribed fire in a very safe and controlled manner. So I encourage everyone to listen in and be on the lookout for any news about public open houses for the prescribed fire program.
And Leanne, where can people find that information about some of the meetings, events, and also just general information about what you do?
Sure. Yeah. MidPen's work protecting and restoring public open space land and making sure that these areas are healthy and resilient to the effects of climate change is a really important tool for our community in being resilient to the effects of climate change. And our wildland fire resiliency program is just one way that we're working to, make sure our community will be resilient to climate change. And you can find out more information at openspace.org about what we're doing around climate change, our restoration projects, our fire program. And as Cody mentioned, we will be having some public open houses as we continue developing our prescribed fire program. And we really welcome public engagement and input on that. So openspace.org.
Great. Thank you two so much for joining me today. And hopefully we'll be able to meet together all in person. And I would love to see some of the open spaces that you have there on the peninsula. And I appreciate your time.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kari.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.